Hello, everyone. Good evening. Chandani here with the Chandani Conversation Series. Very elated and honored to introduce to you my dear friend, mentor, role model, and quite honestly, archetype for the new woman of the new world, Alaleh Kamran. She is from the same lineage as me, from Iran, even though we've both had international upbringings. She is a woman that I find consolation in, and I find hope in. She's a muse, she's a writer, an artist, an activist. She's somebody that I look at and I think, wow, thank goodness for women like that, because they are far and few. And I'm not saying these words without...
Are we talking about me? Who are we talking about?
You have to know that your presence in the world affects so many people. And the fact that you are who you are, you do what you do in the way that you do it, is exactly the remedy for so many ailments we have today. I would love to introduce you for longer and longer, but I would like to give the mic to you and for you to just tell us, where did you stem this fire in your soul? Where did it come from? When did you leave Iran? When did you come to America, and what moved you to be the activist, the voice of justice that you are today?
First of all, Chandani, I have to say, it's quite a pleasure to have met you, and it was my honor and my grace to have had you introduce me at the International Women's Conference in San Francisco years ago. And I think it's a good forum for us, both of us, to thank Hale Manavi for 30 Voices and bringing you and me together and establishing this friendship. So kudos to her for doing that, exactly. And you truly are. I mean, you talk about me as being your muse, and you talk about me as being your inspiration, and it's really the other way around. I look at you and I'm inspired. I look at you and I think to myself, well, if Chandani can do this, if Chandani is doing this, and then why shouldn't I do it? So Goddess, thank you for being my muse, and thank you for giving me the spiritual oomph that I need every once in a while. You really bring that. You give me that charged up, and your products too. I have to tell you that the bag that has the ashwagandha in it, that was freaking amazing. That anyway.
The women's blend.
Yes, that one, the women's blend.
Good.
It's actually it should be called the Goddess's blend, because that's what it does for you. It turns you from a regular working woman into a superstar that can go 18 hours a day, and you're still like going, you know, and you're still going and going. But coming back to the original question that you asked, you know, I was very young. I was 11, 12 years old at the time of revolution in Iran. And I was going to a French school, to a French lycée, and we used to spend our summers in France and Switzerland at shishy-pishy little French camps. And we had a French nanny at the house. And, you know, we had the life with rose-colored glasses, you know, tennis club in the afternoons, you know, go to school with the driver. I'm telling you, the lifestyle that is, now that I think about it, it's ridiculous. But in the midst of all that, I guess, comfort and beauty, there suddenly was unrest. And for a few days prior to the country blowing up, the press was given freedom. And we actually saw the shooting of some of the demonstrators on the streets. And you have to imagine, our kids who grew up here and who are used to violence and violent games, they're completely unfazed at seeing a dead person on the news or somebody getting shot on the news. I remember the first time that I saw a person getting violently attacked on the news. And I remember that sense of nausea, that sense of, ugh, and that stuck with me. It's like, how can anyone do this to anybody else? I mean, I'm totally, clueless that the whole world is unfair, that the whole world is a violent place, that here I am, it's me who lives in this bubble that is completely fictional. In early September, October, November of 1978, this is before the Shah left Iran and before Khomeini came to Iran, there were a series of unrest and demonstrations on the streets. And people would take onto the streets and were chanting and were burning cars and banks and buildings and screaming. And I remember going to my mom and saying, Mom, why are these people in the streets? Why do they need to scream in the streets? Isn't there a better forum for the people to be heard? I mean, even at that age, I realized that the street is probably not a very good forum to be heard. And my mom said, they need a voice to represent them. And I asked her, I said, and who is that voice and how does that come about? And she said, Vakil Majlis. Vakil Majlis, it's here, it's like a representative, but when you, in Farsi, it's Vakil is an attorney, it also means representative, but it's an attorney in Congress or in Parliament. And I literally took it as an attorney. I was too young to understand that an attorney is not the same as a representative. You don't necessarily need to be an attorney to be a representative. So I was 12 years old and I decided, well, that's it. I want to be the voice of the people. I want to be placed in a position where I get to speak on behalf of people and I get to represent the underdog, the voiceless. I'm not interested in the powerful. I'm not interested in the rich. I am not interested, in the big guys, in the big corporations. I'm interested in the underdog. I'm interested in the little guy who gets trampled upon. And that's because that's, and as we talk about my job, I think that's where you see and I know I cannot tell you that I believe in God or not anymore, but I think you see the grace of universe in broken people, in people who are voiceless, who've been hurt or who've been wronged or who've been accused or who've done wrong and who're standing in front of criminal courts, whether it's murder, rape, robbery, burglary, whatever wrong they've done. No kid ever grew up saying, I want to grow up to become a criminal. Something broke. And you see grace in them. And there's some moments when they sit in the office and they work on their files. You see that light of human soul. And that, fast forward 40 years, that has been the overall arc of the story of my life, which is I have been searching, I have been looking for redemption in sin, redemption in wrong. And I think that's in that place where you meet the yin and yang, that's where you meet it. So anyway, so I decided at the age of 12, I wanted to be an attorney, and it really stuck with me for years, forever. It wasn't my goal to become a criminal defense attorney. It was my goal to become an attorney and to eventually go to Washington, D.C. and to move into politics. Life had different plans for me, and my life changed because I wasn't a citizen at the time. I was offered an internship working at the United Nations in Switzerland, but it was available only to US citizens. And I wasn't a citizen yet at the time. So by having lost that opportunity, I lost the opportunity to do a lot of other things after that. And the course of my life changed I eventually dropped out of my first law school, went back. And I have so many stories to say. But then I went back. I decided to go back to law school because I had completely lost my identity. Here I was 21 years old, having finished 2 years of law school at 22 years old. Having finished 2 years of law school when I decided to quit and drop out. So I quit and I dropped out and I came back home. I moved back to Los Angeles and I'm sitting at home and going, who the hell am I? You know, I'm having an identity crisis. What the hell am I going to do now? It's like, I have been nothing. All my life, ever since I was 11, 12, 13, I wanted to be an attorney. What the hell am I going to do now? So I met Justice Bernard Jefferson, also known as JJ. JJ was the first Black man who graduated Harvard Law School, and he could not, when he passed the bar, could not get a job as an attorney. And he ended up working as a paralegal for a firm. Eventually, JJ ended up on the California Court of Appeals, and he wrote the evidence bench book and became a professor at University of West LA School of Law, where I ended up going to at night. And JJ met me at a party before I enrolled at UWLA, and I told him my story. And he looked at me, he goes, Buttercup, that's what Alaleh means. Buttercup, the profession needs you. More than it needs the white male, it needs you. There's a lot of them, there's not enough of you. So he encouraged me to go back to law school, which I did. He got me a job working at the LA County District Attorney's Office during the day. So I worked full-time, 9 to 5 every day, and then I went to school at night. And working at the District Attorney's Office opened up this world, the world of criminal law to me. And I think it's there where I actually got to meet my true purpose in life. And everything after that is history.
Incredible. I didn't know that story, that very magical story about JJ, who was kind of your Pied Piper, so to speak.
JJ was my Pied Piper. He was
and that you were directed to the lion's den without your full awareness of it, and that's where your destiny was met.
Yes.
You talk about those first few days of being in sort of this cavern of complete chaos and emergency, dealing with the criminally charged and how that affected you as a young student and as a woman who was having to understand and make some kind of a difference in that environment.
So let me answer it this way. When you work for the prosecutor's office, you see people as bad people, people who need to be put away, because you're seeing the reports, you're seeing the crime, you're seeing the victim, and you're seeing the report. And your job as a prosecutor or working for the prosecution's office, I was a law clerk and then certified law clerk and then an attorney, but they weren't hiring me. That's a different story. But that's how you see people. You see elements that need to be separated from society because they're harmful to society. So that's what I learned. That's what I was taught to prosecute. Well, my student loans kicked in and the DA's office wasn't hiring. And I was like, I need a job, people. I need to like pay back my student loans. And they were going to another story now. I ended up getting a job at another firm, at a defense firm this time. And that's a story for another day, but I'll give you a little bit of a quip. It was right at the time when we had the LA riots in 1992, when Damian Williams pulled Reginald Denny out of the truck and hit him on the head with a brick. Lucky me, I was part of the original defense team. I was part of the original team of 3 attorneys, and we did the preliminary hearing. And I was given the job of cross-examining some of the major witnesses in that case, namely the helicopter guy who was actually filming the whole incident. Mind you, it turned out that our boss at that center was not an attorney. It turned out that he was actually a convicted criminal who was on a federal parole. And he just set up this law firm, and that he'd hired a bunch of attorneys, and that he was like getting cases coming from the federal prisons to feed into, I mean, it's a novel. And when I found that out, we had to go with, along with the other attorneys, we had to go to the FBI, we had to go to the IRS, we had to go to the State Bar, we had to get protection. It was complete chaos. My dad then decided, my dad had a furniture store at the time, and he goes, I'm not gonna let you work for anybody anymore. That's it, you're done. There was an extra office in the furniture store. It was a huge furniture store. He took a letter A, he took the extra office, he stuck it on the door. That became Suite A. He pulled one of the phone lines and made it into a fax line. And he pulled an extra phone line for me and printed business cards and said, you're now in business for yourself. And so that's how I got my start as a defense attorney. And at the time, there was like only 12 or 15 attorneys in Los Angeles, Iranian attorneys in Los Angeles, maybe 15, maybe 20. And I was the only one at the time who was doing criminal defense, female criminal defense attorney. And immediately after I hung up my shingle, I landed my first murder on the defense side. So here I came from the background of seeing people who are in the criminal justice system as bad people who need to be put away. And now I'm in a position as a defense attorney that is working for herself and has to bring in money and has to pay her student loans, has an obligation to do right by the client, to sit in county jail, go from jail to jail, and sit down and talk to these people who are facing life sentences and get their story and understand what happened. What happened that night? What happened at that specific moment? And then in order to understand what happened that night, what happened that specific moment, you need to understand who that person is. How did they grow up? What happened in their lives? What was the breaking point? What was the transformation point? Where was the disconnect? And you need to understand human psychology. You need to have patience. You need to have grace. You need to have understanding. You need to have no judgment. You need to be open. And in the process of sitting and interviewing people who have failed, you look at them and you realize, I go by the grace of God, I could be there. I could be sitting over there. I'm sitting where I'm sitting because of some fluke in the cosmos. It could have been me. I could be there. So I have learned to appreciate and love my clients for what they bring me, for what they teach me, for all that they've given me. They've enriched me with so much spirituality. They've given me so much strength. They have taught me to be all heart. They have taught me to build a practice based on passion and compassion, on forgiveness, on resilience. They have taught me to go through life and take the blows and look at what happens to me and say, it's really not bad. I'm still very lucky. To be grateful even when I'm on my knees, because I have seen worse. I don't know if I answered your question.
It's compelling to me to hear a female criminal defense attorney of an ethnic minority speak about her position and her career as something that has allowed her to be grateful through adversity, through the most extreme, violent, challenged stories of human beings invoking crime in society, that has in turn actually developed your compassion and your humanity and your grace and your love. And to see that there is a relativism when it comes to morality, and there is a relativism when it comes to justice, that yes, we need to say that there are certain things that are acceptable, there are certain things that are unacceptable, there are laws, there are systems of rule, and yet within the confines and boundaries of all ethics and morals, there comes a time between one human being and the next that you sit together and you are equal and you are in non-judgment and you are one and the same. I feel like this is what your career has brought you to today. How do you sit in a courtroom and defend a client with that knowing that they are 100% guilty and that there's very little you can do?
But that's the whole thing. But that's the whole thing. Knowing that a client has committed a crime has nothing to do with the finding of guilt or innocence. In our criminal justice system, everybody is presumed to be innocent until such time as they're proven guilty. And they have to be proven guilty by competent evidence before, in front of either a judge or a jury. Not with a coerced confession, not with tainted evidence, not with planted evidence. So my job is really not to deny that my client did or did not do something. My job is to make sure that the officer that testifies against my client has not planted that evidence. We've had a lot of cases where we showed the evidence was planted. It's my job to show that the confession, that or the admission or the statement that my client gave was not coerced or forced or obtained outside of Miranda or illegally. It's my job to make sure that the government sticks by the Constitution, because the government has a higher duty. Because our system of laws and our criminal justice system was written in such a way that we decided several hundred years ago that we would rather let a guilty man walk than allow an innocent man to be convicted wrongfully. So my job is actually, I'm a constitutional defender. I make sure that the Constitution is upheld on a daily basis in every single one of my cases. My client is the Constitution. The criminal defendant is the conduit through which I fight for the Constitution on a daily basis. So it's a very academic, very philosophical, very dogmatic on one hand, very dogmatic fight for me. It's an existential, it's a very philosophical, it's a daily reaffirmation that I stand for this flag that gave me the power, the education, the identity, the opportunity. And I will fight to my death for my flag. At the same time, I will for my Constitution as well. So that part of it satisfies, that intellectual challenge satisfies the intellectual part of my brain. Then you have the cat and mouse game that you play with the government, which is the procedural issues, the substantive motions, catching the government doing wrong, catching the government being lazy, catching the cops not doing what they were supposed to have done, finding that there was documentation they didn't preserve, finding, you know what I'm saying? That part, the cat and mouse game, the challenge of playing chess with the government, that also satisfies another part of me. And then we have the spiritual part of it, which is you realize that your client maybe is charged with a first-degree murder, but maybe it's not a first-degree murder, it's actually a manslaughter. So my job is to bring that home to the jury or to the judge, or let's say to show a different type of person to the court or to the DA that they think they have. And case in point, I had a Hispanic 20-year-old whose older brother went to the London School of Economics. His older sister was a USC graduate. He, because of where they lived in, ended up getting involved with a bunch of gangs, became a gangbanger. Now, this is a family of immigrants. Mom is working, dad is working. I mean, these are your sweet, Hispanic, lovely family who've done everything they can, you know, to build a success story in the US. But the third kid somehow went rogue. Okay, I get it. I raised 2 boys. I understand. Teenagers sometimes can go rogue. Well, in the middle of going rogue, kid decides to pick up a gun. They go shooting. I don't even want to get involved in the details of the case, but suffice it to say that the district attorney's offer on this case was 4 years or 2 years of state prison. And my thing was, why are we sending a kid who's never been inside the system to state prison? Whatever he hasn't learned, he's going to learn. And whatever anger he has because we didn't give him an opportunity, he's going to turn around and come back out, and he's going to be more of a badass than he ever was. So while the case was pending, I made it my job to find him a job, got him enrolled in school, made sure he moved out of that neighborhood, made parents understand that we now need a structure more than anything else, made him understand that if he did X, Y, and Z for me, not for his mom and dad, that I would deliver the goods for him. And that I had to sit him in my office and I had to extract a promise from him, which I do from all of my clients. So that if I put myself on the line for you, you will do what I tell you to do. Because it's a contract. You trust me and I trust you. You don't disappoint me, I'll kick you in the knees. Anyone who's watching this and is my client will know that my biggest thing is, if you disappoint me, I will break your legs, and I will break your legs because you made a promise to me. To make a really long story short, we pled open to the court, which means we bypassed the district attorney's office. We pled to the judge. I pled to all 8 counts, which means that if he picked up one tiny itty bitty violation, he would have gone to state prison for, 15, 16 years. The judge gave him straight up probation. In other words, he didn't do a single day of jail. Send him home on the condition that he enrolled in school, being enrolled in school, keep his job, and keep a good life, and just come back to court every 3 months and show that he's in school, he has a job, and he's doing what he's supposed to do, and stay out of the gangs. Fast forward 5 years, we just finished the case, wrapped it up. He's married. He has a child of his own. He's finished his education. He has a job. He's gainfully employed. And we were able to reduce some of the charges to misdemeanors. That is this is what gives me that pep to go to the office on a daily basis. That's where I like to take somebody who's standing before the court naked, ready to be flayed. And I like to recreate a new person out of them and prove to the world that we can all be redeemed, that there is saving grace in each of us, no matter how heinous or how bad what we've done. We're not bad. We do bad things, but we're not bad.
So I'm going to challenge you now with something that's compelling, and I'm going to leave the Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd issue to the side for a minute. And I'd like to bring in, on your note, the Jeffrey Epstein case. And now with the recent arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think most all of us have been privy to the documentary. And if we haven't, you should go and see it just to get an overview. Of course, it's opinionated, but an overview of the timeline of Jeffrey Epstein to the culmination of his death and now this arrest. I would like for you to comment on that scenario, as far as if you had to be the defense in a scenario like that, knowing full well these people, how would you adopt any kind of offering?
Again, first of all, I haven't seen the documentary, and I've been meaning to sit down and watch the documentary, but it's just, life's been really, truly exciting these days. I can't sit and watch too much TV. Have better things to do. But you know, Jeffrey Epstein's story is just a dirty old man trafficking in young girls. It ain't the first time we've seen it. It wouldn't have been my first case. We see it all the time. It's part of my practice. Sex cases, child molestation cases. The only type of client that I will not touch are sex molest cases where the victim is under the age of 13. I cannot do that. I have a line, and that's my line. And forgive me, whoever is sitting up there, but I tried, I can't. Now, your question is, how would you do it? Nobody was going to go into court and scream that Epstein is innocent. Some kind of a deal would have been worked out. Thing is, we didn't get to see that day, because what Epstein had to say was far more dangerous than any deal he would have been offered. Now, when this happened, I did predict, and I think I wrote it somewhere, that wait, it's going to be in a bit, we're going to hear that she's cooperating with the FBI and with the feds. And sure enough, she's cooperating, because now she has a story to tell. But Chandani, sex cases are difficult cases to defend. They are. They're morally, ethically, factually difficult. They're not pretty cases. Not all cases need to be pretty. Not everything is as beautiful as I've been describing it. So you have challenging cases, and that's part and parcel of being a defense attorney. There's some things that will splice your soul. There are some things that you will go home and you will go in the shower and stand there and wash yourself for a good 15-20 minutes. There are days, I've been driving convertibles for the last 15 years, and people keep asking me, why do you drive convertibles? You who all cannot get any sun. I can't get any. I'm allergic to the sun. I go in the sun, I get 5 billion freckles. And they say, why do you drive? Why do you keep buying a convertible if you cannot put the top down during the day? And nobody understands this. But when you go into a county jail or a federal facility or a state prison, anywhere, I don't care where, in any kind of detention, and you sit and talk to the client, there's a certain stench, there's a certain smell. I cannot explain it. I don't know. Incarceration has a smell to it. And you would only know it if you've been inside those walls. So when I come out, I have to put the top down, and I have to be able to look at the sky, and I have to be able to breathe air into my lungs. That's why I drive a convertible. So there are those cases. Huh?
It's confessions of a criminal defense attorney, and we're getting a lot of great confessions right now.
You are. You're getting a lot of the raison d'être, the reasons behind why I do certain things that I do. Yeah.
So there is this side of you, and I'm witness to it. There's this hard ass, badass, don't mess with me, I'll break your knee.
Hormonal.
This side of you, and just as powerfully, there's this romantic French seductress, poet, romantic, and these two parts are so different from each other, and yet part and parcel of the same entity. So talk to me about your love of Rumi and your drive towards looking for the philosophical aspect of poetry and love and beauty, and how that correlates into you walking into the courtroom and defending murder and injustice. What is that?
You know, it's a yin and yang. It's left and right together, because you can't have one without the other. You cannot be complete and whole unless you tap into your own soul. You know, at the age of, on my 40th birthday, a week before my 40th birthday, I had a gardening accident. And extreme sports, okay? Gardening. And I was cutting branches in my backyard, which was my only moment of zen, was being in the backyard and dealing with my flowers and trees and whatever. It's the only moment of zen in my life. And as I was pruning a tree, it wouldn't cut. So I held the shears, rather than holding them this way, I held them this way, going, and it kicked back into my face, and I broke the left, my left cheekbone, eye socket. I had a triangular fracture. So basically the left side of my face was fractured. And I now have a titanium cheekbone, a plastic eye socket. Yeah, I do. So the whole left side is reconstructed. And that pulled me deep into an existential crisis. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose on this earth? You know, because you have to go through a traumatic experience, and especially when you hit 40, everything else together. And you're going, what the fuck am I doing here? You know? Excuse my French. And that's when I had been flirting with the idea of taking a Rumi class for a while. I'd been reading it on my own, but I actually ended up taking a class, and for a few years. And I realized that all that he's talking about is unconditional love. And in order to be able to give somebody unconditional love, or to be able to give the world unconditional love, first you must learn to love yourself unconditionally. You must learn to accept yourself and forgive yourself. So I learned that I don't have to be the best mother, the best wife, the best attorney every single day. There are days that I'm going to fail at one or the other, but there are days that I'm going to excel at one or the other. And that my purpose in life every day is going to get up every day, look at myself in the mirror every day, and promise to myself every day that I'm going to be authentic to myself. Because the greatest injustice and the greatest crime I came to understand is to betray the one life that we've been given. And if this life, this gift that has been given to me, if I am not true to me, and if I am not true to who I am supposed to be, and if I'm not going to live out my purpose in life, then I am the biggest criminal of it all. There is no coming back from that. None. That I mean, it took a while. It took 2 years to come to that. 2 years post-accident. For 2 years, the radio in my car was off. I was completely shied away from my friends. And I put aside everything that I had learned. And I decided to keep only those things that I wanted to keep, that was truly, that I had chosen, those ethics, those morals, those likes, dislikes that I had picked and chosen personally, not the dictates that were given to me, not the dogmas that were given to me, not the social, religious, ethical musts, you must do this or you must do that, that were given to me. I decided that if I'm going to be an honest human being, I'm going to have to start being honest with myself and live an authentic life. And unless I can live an authentic life, I cannot stand in front of my clients or in front of the court and sound authentic and sound compassionate. And when that shift took place, which was huge, the shift of paradigm was so huge, and it affected my business, my practice of law tremendously. My practice just boomed, and it really changed the way I practiced. And the more it changed the way I practiced, the more it fed my soul, and the more it fed my soul, the more I found I had these epiphanies that I could write. This source of writing just came back. This beauty, this desire for writing and poetry, and just you know what I'm saying. It's just fed itself, one after the other.
It was this rebirthing you had.
Yeah, it was
through this experience, this dark night of the soul.
Right.
And I know that recently that calling has also led you to travel to Tibet, to the land of Tibet. And I know that that was a very pivotal moment for you as well. And I'd like for you to comment on how this spiritual awakening for you led you to this trip, and what did this trip bring you, and how has it shaped you even more differently today?
You know, I've always wanted to go to Tibet. Always. It's been on my bucket list. And it really was interesting because I was in my doctor's office. I was actually booking a trip to Costa Rica for 2 or 3 weeks. And my doctor said, you know, there's a group that's going to Tibet. They have one space available. Would you like to go? I go, yeah. It's just like, it was exact those dates that I was going to Costa Rica. And it's like the universe actually made it happen. The universe called on to me, and the universe created the opportunity, called me there. And I was totally unprepared because it was like 3 weeks before the trip. It was like, so it was just, I didn't know you're supposed to take those pills so you don't like suffocate at 12,000 feet up in the air. I really didn't know. I was like so unprepared. But Tibet was baptismal. It was like a baptismal. Tibet was like going home. Tibet had that energy, the vibe. I swear you could feel it. You could just, it is a phenomenally spiritual country. The people are incredibly, I mean, I didn't really sat down and talk to them. I took a lot of pictures though. But just being there, being in that vibe, you pick up the vibrations. You feel the earth breathing. You feel the movement of Mother Earth. You feel it. It's there. I could be wackadoodle crazy. Okay, hello. Some people might think I'm a nut job. That's fine by me. But there truly is something incredible over there. There's an energy that lifts you. There's an energy that purifies you. The group was an amazing group that I was with, although I kept to myself most of the time. It was a period of my life where I needed to be by myself. You shed skin. We need to shed skin every once in a while. The skin that we had is too tight, and at times you need a different type of skin so you can grow and you can become a different version or a better version, or different version of yourself. And I needed Tibet, and Tibet did that for me. Tibet allowed me to morph into a cleaner me. And the purpose, for me, the purpose has always been to get the inside and the outside to become more and more integrated and to become more and more aligned. To be aligned, I need to be at peace and aligned. Me, like the surfer on the surfboard, on the water, aligned with the universe, up and down. And Tibet brought that home for me. It was an amazingly, it was a purifying trip for me. It was incredible. I highly recommend it. You should go. Everybody should go.
Yes, no, I have been close to Tibet, but I've not actually been there, but I will travel there. I want to close with asking you one last question, and I want you to just speak about it. We don't have too much time, and I don't want to waste your time, but with the racial inequality that exists across the world, from Tibet to Iran to Europe to Africa to America to Europe, do you see racial inequality ever going away? Or do you feel that it can only dissolve in its severity of discrimination? And I'm talking globally now. I'm not talking just...
I know. We're not just talking about Black Lives Matter, because BLM is not the only injustice that's taking place in the world. There's all sorts of people in all sorts of countries. There's, in any country you look at, there is minorities and majorities, and in any country that you go to, there is a group of oppressed people, and history is usually written by the ones who won. So you really want to know history? Read the books and then turn them upside down, and that's the true history. That's the real history that took place. Do I think that human suffering is going to go away? No. Do I think racial divisiveness is going to go away? No. Do I think? I think the dark forces that are at play around us are there so that those who have the light and carry the light can rise to the challenge and understand that they have an obligation to the world to light the light and pave the way. I think the dark forces around us are a reminder to those who can and those who should that sitting silent and doing nothing is being complicit. So it's an awakening. Nothing else that I can think of has brought the world to such a standstill for us to take a step back and reflect that we are part of an organism, a living organism, and that perhaps the coronavirus is not the virus. Perhaps we are the virus. Coronavirus is the antibody of Mother Earth to remind us that it can extinguish us because we are harming Mother Earth. It is it's a call. I think it's a wake-up call to each one of us to realize our mortality, our fragility, our interdependence, our social obligations, our moral obligations. Hey, listen, not everybody has to love everybody. I don't care. You're not here to love everybody around you, but you're here to accept and tolerate people around you, even those you don't like. People within the same family cannot stand each other. You really expect them to like people from other races? By human nature is one that sees itself above and beyond, above the rest. I mean, look at it. Look at our little cultural experimentation in any group. You have 3 women together. One is certainly going to feel better than the other 2. I mean, it's just normal human nature. Let's accept who we are. But I think everything that's taken place politically is a reminder that we need to step up. That if we are spiritually awakened, if we have love for our children, if we respect Mother Earth, if we respect what gift has been given to us in terms of life, then it is our moral, social, ethical obligation to carry the light and to make the world a better place. And you cannot make the world a better place by choosing sides. Once you choose sides, then you divide the whole. And once you cleave the whole, then you have disturbed the integrity of the whole. The whole is no longer whole. So if you say left or right, or black or white, or this or that, once you identify yourself with one, you separate yourself from the whole, and you have disturbed the totality. That cannot be. If you are in love with the universe and with humanity, you have to love it as a whole. You have to accept it as a whole. You have to stand for peace, and peace means everything together. The peace and love are the only concepts that include everything within their definition. And that's the way I see people who cry peace and love. If truly that's what you mean, then act it. Be the light. And forget the ones who are, taking sides and fighting, and they are here for a reason. They have their own journeys. They're walking their own paths. You walk your path of light. You here do right by your soul. You just enrich your own soul. By lighting that light, you will pave the way for others. And with that, namaste.
Well, with your light and your sense of cohesion and unity and sense of defiance for injustice on all sides, you are paving the way for true justice and true humanity. And I commend you. I bow to you and I thank you every single day for being the light in my life and in the light in so many people's lives. And may God give you strength and carry your light further and brighter, because we need you so much today, more than ever. Alaleh Kamran, thank you so much for sharing this sacred time with me.
Thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure confessing to you.
And maybe next time we come on and maybe you can delight us with some of your poetry and writing.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Namaste.
Namaste.